In California, we tend to use more renewables, and we also have a better energy efficiency. How is it that we compare to the rest of the country and to the rest of the world? How are we doing?
California is something like the world's seventh largest economy. You never know quite where it is, seeing where France and Italy are. And we're about the 11th or the 12th largest emitter of greenhouse gases. So we're a pretty big factor. But the fact that our economy is much stronger than our emissions is because California has been, like Europe and Japan, is as good or even better than we are. We have the lowest per capita energy use of any state in the United States and the lowest per capita emission of greenhouse gases. The reason for that is that we have a 35-year tradition of rules. It's mandatory that you have double pane windows. It's mandatory that you have insulation. It's mandatory that you have efficient refrigerators and air conditioners. Now, what's the worst state in the United States in terms of emissions? It turns out it's per capita, it's Wyoming. So you could say, but that's not fair because they produce all this energy and they don't have any people. When you divide by zero, you get infinity. So let's leave Wyoming out and say that that doesn't count. What's the next worst state in terms of emissions per capita that's big and has population? Texas. Funny thing, where the president and the vice president had come from, you had oil men from the state that was emitting. Isn't it surprising that these guys were against climate policy and in fact against admitting it was even a serious problem? Because their way of seeing the world was blinded by their experience that business should be unfettered, and we happen to be in the oil business, so we're not going to constrain it. But you don't constrain it, then you end up with the sustainability crises that we're heading toward. So how do we get Texas in the game? Well, I talked to friends of mine in Texas, and they're actually doing a very good job on renewables. At least T. Boone Pickens is trying to get the windmills out there, and Texas will lead the country in it. But it's going to take a while before they catch up. Why are they the second worst state in terms of emissions? Because they don't have, like California, a series of rules that constrain personal and entrepreneurial activity. So you have a political culture down there which is on entrepreneurial rights of the prime value. In California, you have a political culture which says public protection is a prime value. So the question is, where is Washington going to be? Because if we have national performance standards on buildings, on lights, on electronics, on automobiles, and appliances, and they have to be equally obeyed in California as they are in Texas, we can much more rapidly move toward lower emissions, and we can save ourselves money because the energy costs keep going up, and therefore more efficient products actually have very good paybacks. So the lesson is you have to have rules if you want to make a difference, and the fight is over how much, how fast.
Fossil fuels, as we know it, are the primary source of our energy. I mean, obviously renewables are less than 1% of what we use throughout the world. In some parts in California, maybe it's a little bit higher. So how is it that we can mitigate greenhouse gas emissions from getting into the atmosphere?
Well, it's absolutely right, David, that greenhouse gases are primarily a result of fossil fuels and deforestation, and that the renewables, which don't emit them very much, are only a percent or two of the total amount of energy that we use. But then you hear other people saying, but the fastest growing sector in energy is solar and wind. It's true, the growth rates are very fast, but they're starting from such a low baseline that it's going to take us a while to get there without accelerated programs. Well, why is it that we use so much coal and oil? Well, it's convenient and it's been cheap. And part of the reason it's so cheap is that we haven't charged oil the cost of wars to defend it. That's not part of the price of gasoline. We haven't charged coal the elimination of the capacity to eat all the fish you want in the 10,000 lake state of Minnesota because the mercury that comes out of the stacks from coal burning power plants make it unsafe. We haven't charged coal for the air pollution which sends kids to the hospital with asthma. So what we've done is subsidize the traditional energy systems by not charging what economists call the externalities, which is the parts of the damage that they do to society as a whole, but that aren't part of the bottom line of the industry. Only government can fix that. Because government has to come along and say, wait a minute, you can't harm collective goods like public health or the environment and not be charged, because then we haven't gotten the price of your commodity right. So the big political fight is, oh, but if you do that, we're going to have unemployment in the industry. I'm going to raise the price of energy. That's true. But why should they be subsidized on the lungs of children? And as a result of that, the government has to step in and start charging them. Once you do that, then solar doesn't look so expensive, and wind is already competitive, but we don't have enough transmission lines, so we have to spend $1 trillion over a decade or two putting in transmission lines, and not the old kind, direct current lines that are more efficient. So what we really need to do is rebuild the energy infrastructure of America to bring it into the 21st century, and not just America. We have to be sure the Chinese and the Indians and the others, as they build their infrastructure, don't build Victorian industrial technologies, but leapfrog to high technology. If we do all of that, then we have a chance to continue to develop economically, improve people's lives, and at the same time not pollute so much. But the special interests that are vested in the status quo will fight it tooth and nail, and that's exactly what's going on now.